Hi, good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming. My name is Pierre. Zainab is also helping me. She's on the Hangout with me. Say hi. Hi. I have a quick presentation to go through with you today, and then after that, we'll open it up for questions. I'd like to keep this focused on people who are small business owners, not people who are very, very advanced, because I'd like to make sure that we hear their questions and see how we can help. So let's start with the presentation. Lots of people ask, how do you build a website? Can you see the presentation, by the way? Yes, I'm going to assume yes. They ask, how do you build a website? It's actually quite simple once you get your head around the framework for it, and it boils down to three questions. Who are your users? What do they want, and do they get it from your website? So when you focus on small businesses, who are your customers? How do you reach them? And then, what do these customers want, and do they get it from your website? And do you get what you want out of the website from them? Like, come into the store. So I'm gonna dig into those a little bit now. The first thing I want to say is that everything I'm going to say is found in these three short URLs. I will send the links around. I'll add them to the Hangout event page. So if you want to take a screenshot now, great. If not, don't worry about it. I want you to pay more attention rather than write notes frantically, because this is all documented. So let's start with the first step. Who are your users? Some questions to think about. Who are they? What do they call themselves? Which languages do they speak? Where can you find them online and offline? This is where you start thinking about, integrating all the different marketing channels. Small businesses tend to be very well embedded in the local community. So you can start asking questions about, where are your customers in local events, for example. In some communities around the world, the customers can speak different languages, not just in terms of, like English and French, for example, but also like, what do these people call themselves? So even if you're selling to different other small businesses, for example, do they call themselves small business owners? Do they call themselves, like in the UK, are they directors of companies? Things like that. Start thinking about them. Try to get the understanding of who these people are that you're trying to sell to. This will help you in lots of other business decisions, because once you start understanding your users, you can tailor your service, you can tailor your product for them. So all of these questions should be on your mind anyway. But try to start thinking about it in terms for what you can do for your website. Now, the other thing is that to think about, what context do they want the information you have on their website? You can think about it in many, many different ways. So, for example, are they at home? Are they at work? Or are they on the go? That's a common one. Which devices do they use to access your website? Here we're starting to get into a little bit on the technical side of things. Are they primarily tablet users that come in the evening? Or are they mobile phone users that come over lunch? You would expect, for example, if you're a sandwich shop, you'll have very different usage patterns throughout the day. So, for example, someone is hungry in an area, they're more likely to be looking for a sandwich shop over lunch on their phone. Or somebody is looking to cater for an event that you can, you provide that service. They're probably sitting on a desktop maybe, or they are actually laying down in bed at night doing some work on their tablet. So think about the different contexts, and think about the different devices these your customers might be using, and see how you can cater to all of these quite well. The other thing is to think about is what do they want? So we talked a little bit about this. We touched upon it quite a bit so far. Is that what do they want? What's the site's topic? If you're a small publisher, for example, a blogger, you'll have very different considerations to think about than a sandwich shop or a bakery or a plumber or an electrical goods shop. So what do customers want? Are they thinking about specific products? Are they thinking about a service? Do they want to think can you do, for example, if you're catering, they might be wondering if you can cater for a big event, or can you do small events? Are you open on weekends? Think about, your users want. This is the question I keep saying, like, what do your users want? Who are they? And a good way to think about this is, like, sometimes you have to ask them, how did you find us? Why did you come here? Don't be afraid to talk to your customers and try to see if your website is serving them as well as it should. The other one, like the question I have in bold here, is actually the most important one, but it's actually quite general, so some people miss how important it is. It's called task completion. So every person who visits a website has something specific on their mind. It could be as simple as, I just want to kill time, or the way I'm researching to buy something, or get a service, or just researching all these different areas, trying to compare the different options that I have. So when you think about what's a good website, what your users want, think about all the different tasks they are after. What do they want to accomplish? What do they want to learn? What do they want to do on your website, and help them do that. So this is the most important one. It's called task completion, and try to satisfy that on your website. So once you have all of these questions answered, you start building one or more users that are very general. You can start talking about them. They're called personas, and a persona is in a way it's a bit of a mental shortcut to know what you're talking about. So who are the people? And you might find that your website caters for multiple personas. So it could be that just to go back to the example we used, like, for example, if you are a restaurant, you can cater to people who are wanting to have a sit-in lunch, for example, but you can also do catering. So these are different kinds of customers, and the way you approach talking to them can be very different. So these are different personas. You might have a list of those, like 3, 4, 5. Try to keep them fairly distinct, but don't go too crazy and get too granular. Keep it general, and try to. You want this as a tool to help you understand your customers and how you can build websites for them. This is not about getting down to nitty-gritty details. You can if you want, but leave that for later stages. In the early stages, make sure you just understand broadly who are your users. So you're building these personas, and now you are going to build something for them. Now, these two links are start getting into technical details. The most important thing is that everything these days is on mobile. Even though that you might think that your users might be, might not be they might be at their desk, you'd be surprised that you'll be getting more and more mobile traffic. Your mobile usage is exploding, and more and more, especially if you cater to, if you're like a multinational business, different countries have very different usage patterns. So the most important thing is to take out your mobile device and have a play on your website and try to get in the shoes of the personas you've built and their tasks, and see if you can complete them easily. We offer some tools that are linked from those pages, like the mobile-friendly tool, mobile-friendly test tool, that will tell you whether your web page is mobile-friendly or not, and what you can do about it. There are other tools. I'll link to those later. So one thing that I've noticed is that some business owners are very, very smart, and they really, really like to build things themselves. So by all means, read those, and get your hands dirty. Good luck. The other thing is that some people like to outsource this kind of activity. So you hire a developer or an agency to build these things for you. That's good, and by all means do that. And when you read our documentation, at least you'll understand all the different options, so you can understand which one best suits your business. So you can actually ask your developer to build something tailored for your website, and you can talk to the developer more intelligently about what is needed and what are the different trade-offs that you're making. So you don't need to become an expert. You can if you want, but it will help you either way, whether you want to do things yourself or you want to outsource it. The other thing to think about, especially for small businesses, is a very, very an acronym. It's called the NAP, NAP. Actually, it's missing the fourth one called the O. So every small business has information that people search for all the time. Their name, the address, the phone number, and whether they're open, the opening hours. Now, this is so important. We actually have separate documentation specifically for these location pages for small businesses. It could be a single location business like a restaurant, or it could be a small chain like 3 or 4 restaurants, or you could be multiple chains like a national retailer. These 4 pieces of information are important regardless of your size. You need to make sure that it's very easy to find your name and address, phone number, opening hours, because people do search for these, and this will help you get footfall traffic into your store. That link there talks about how best to do that, and make sure that it's easy both for users to understand, your location page, and find the information they want, and also how that works for our search. So you've built this, and I'm intentionally keeping this section a bit short because it can get technical very, very quickly, and sharing code over Hangout is not that easy. The third step is to measure everything. Now, the thing to think about here is to think about all the different tasks and all the steps to get to the task completion. So these are called conversions. So for example, imagine that you are a retailer, and the conversion is to actually get somebody to come to your store. That's not that easy to track, but you can track things along the way. So somebody searches for something, lands onto your website, and they look up the opening hours, or maybe they use your on-site search. We'll work through an example here in a second. This link here is for a blog from a fellow Googler called Avinash, and he does a very, very, very good job explaining how to really get started with analytics. Everything from the basics and the pitfalls about just sticking to the basic kind of analytics, all the way up to how to do advanced analytics. It can be overwhelming if you're just starting out. That's okay. There are lots of nuances to it. But once you get your head around it and trying to understand that you're trying to track all the different steps and how to identify which steps to track, then it actually gets quite easy. So start with that. That's an individual blog post on his website, but his whole website is great. So go and read that. All right. So you've identified your users, you've built things for them, and now you're tracking how your website is doing. Let's work through an example. Say you're a car dealership, and you are interested in a persona of somebody looking to buy a car. They're researching their options. So some of the conversions you can think about is that if you have that, and people do, you can sell the car completely online. That's a conversion. Somebody comes on your website, hits the buy button, and they come and pick up the car. That's a conversion. The other more likely conversions is that they might call a dealership to book a test. Now that test drive is it has value to it. It's a conversion. It's an important one. So you start thinking about, okay, this persona, how can I? One of the things I need to think about is a task for them is to make sure it's easy to book a test drive. The other thing is that they might be earlier in the process, and they might be thinking about different models. Do you want this kind of car? Do I want a 7-seater or 5-seater? Do I want this? Do I want that? What kind of colors do you have? And what are the different options on these models? So they're comparing. So maybe you want to think about having a car comparison tool on your website about the different options. The other one is, again, to go back to the opening hours, is that it might be as simple as, hey, are you open on the weekend? Are you open on Sunday? That's a common question that's not easy to answer sometimes. You might be, you might not, but make it easy to make for users to find this information so they can plan their schedule and figure out what's best, when it's best to come to you. Now, if we were face-to-face, I would stop now and ask you about your website and ask you to think about your personas, think about your tasks, and think about what you need to measure at each one of those. But you can do that after we're done. Now, we're kind of finished here, so just to summarize again, is that we want to understand your users, try to get into their mentality, try to get into their mindset as much as you can, understand who they are, all the different kinds of users, and what they want, what are the different tasks they want to accomplish, and do they get it from your website? And if they don't, then you have something to work towards. And if they do, if you do, make sure that it's effective, or you can try to test different improvements for it to see if it can work or not. You make it even better. Now, more help. These are the links. I've shared everything, and another bonus one so far in the slide deck. I'll share these later, so don't worry too much about writing them down. But we have, the mobile-friendly websites. That's an important one. Web fundamentals is another documentation about how its technical side of how to build websites. Webmaster Tools is it's a tool. It's a free tool from Google that shares information with the owners of websites. You have to verify you own the website, and we share information about how Google search sees your website and the keywords it ranks for and things like that. Because this is kind of important information, only you have to verify for it. Business location pages, I talked about this, for the NAPO information. And also when you're stuck, we have the Webmaster Help Forums. You can go there, ask questions. Googlers, and we have a good community that can help you answer your questions and make your own website better. And finally, please, if you can, this URL I would like you to write down, please, is the survey. If you can please fill out the survey to see if this this Hangout, is it any good? Is there anything else we can help with? Not just on this Hangout specifically, but Google in general, Google search, so we can figure out how we can help people build better websites. Honestly, and I think that's it. Yes, thank you very much. And I'm going to stop now and go back and see if anybody has questions. We'll start with the live questions. And then once you ask your question, I'm going to ask you to please drop off, because you can make space for other people to join and ask their question live if possible. Okay, so who wants to start? Nobody has any questions here. Okay, great. Okay, we had some questions from the Q&A feature, so we'll just go to that and start asking those questions. So, Zainab, do you want to start with those questions, or should I?
Yes, I will start with the first question. So Carrie asked, why would a business rank very badly for just one keyword? So the question is, the answer is very simple here. It's normal to see fluctuations in SERPs. I mean, there are continuous changes in SERPs, and your competitors also optimize their websites as well. So it is normal to rank #1 and then #3 and then #5 and then go back to #2. These are normal changes. My advice would just be to focus on your audience and build quality content, compelling content, and unique content that is tailored for you users exactly. So that's it. But it's normal to see fluctuations.
You'll take the second one, and then I'll take a third one? Or do we have any live questions? Okay. I see some people are asking if they can't join because the Hangout is full. So if you don't have any questions, please drop off, and you can watch it live. But if you don't have any questions, please make room for others. Zainab, over to you.
So the second question is from Syed. My website have crawl errors problems. The main issue is 404 URLs. I've already removed some of these URLs, but still Webmaster Tools gives me crawl errors all the time. So the answer here is, again, very simple. We've published a blog post a couple of years ago about 404s because they're still very scary for some people, where they shouldn't, because 404s do not hurt your website. So if your content has been removed, if you don't have any content on that specific URL, it is normal to have a 404 code. Now, if you have corrected these URLs, or if you have added a new content and the URL should be live, then you should just wait for our systems to recrawl these pages, and then we'll be able to drop them from the crawl errors report. But otherwise, you should not be scared about it. You should not panic. You should just wait for us to recrawl your website. And if you have real 404 pages, then they're not going to hurt you. And they're not going to hurt your website.
Yep. And just to add to that is that we see a lot of 404s actually come back and start serving content. So you might see us still crawling these 404s at a much lower crawl rate, but you might still see them, and we'll report those to you. But as Zainab said, unless you're 404ing an important page you didn't mean to, don't panic. It's fine. It's part of a normal operation of a website. Any live questions? Yes, please go ahead, James.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, I had a question. You mentioned one of the really good ways of tracking conversions is via recording phone calls, for example, in the worked example, calling to book a test drive. What different ways can you track conversions for telephone calls? I understand you can now do it in AdWords, but are there any ways of kind of tracking sort of regular calls that you're aware of?
That's a great question. I'm not in a position to recommend a specific one, so I'd like to leave this is that I've been watching this part of the industry quite a bit, and there are many tools that do this. I think you said AdWords does it. I don't work on AdWords, and I think they do. So the first thing I would say is check there first. And I don't know what the different, I know there are different options. The key point about this here is, suppose you can't implement one solution. The simplest one to say is ask the caller and say, hey, where did you hear about us? And I get this quite a bit. I know when I call some companies, sometimes they ask me can you fill out a survey when you're done? And it's like a simple question. And you can start doing things like that. So that's one option to do it. And there are other options, depending on how it works and what kind of menu system you have and things like that. You can start, you can see which one best fits with your business. But I can't recommend a specific one for you right now.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sorry, it's not the best answer. I appreciate that.
No, that's okay. Yeah, it's something I'm, like I say, researching and looking into as well. So yeah, that's great. Thank you. But yeah, I think asking the callers how they came in is quite a valuable way of doing it, like you suggest. So
yeah,
great.
Any other live questions? We have some new joiners and no questions. Great. So let's go to the questions again from the that were submitted previously. So Anthony asks that PageSpeed complains about optimizing delivery of CSS for Google Fonts. Oh, interesting. I'll double check with the fonts team and see what's going on. The one thing, I'm looking at the URL you shared. You're looking at one typeface with multiple. With multiple weights and also quite a large subset. So I don't know exactly what's going on there, so I can't give you a direct answer right now. I'll check with the fonts team, but I do know the fonts team, and they do a lot of work to make sure that the CSS is optimized. So the first thing I would say is that you make sure is that you're actually asking for the subset that is needed for your website. This is getting quite advanced for the audience, this Hangout, and I don't know the answer off the top of my head, so I'm going to have to cut it short at this for this question. Okay. Any other live questions, or Zainab, do you want to take another one?
Yeah, if we don't have any live question, I'll take another Q&A. All right, so this one is from Michael. If a website is not mobile friendly and they change their URL to redirect to a website that is mobile friendly, will this affect their SERPs listing negatively? Very simple answer, it won't. My advice to Michael would just to make sure to set up the redirects correctly on the website and add a rel canonical link element as well to make sure that our system recognizes a new website as the canonical one.
Yep, and Zainab's answer is actually in the documentation that we're going to share the links for. So yeah, don't get too stressed about the implementation. We'll send you the links for those. Right, another question. Oh, another advanced question from Anthony. Wondering why Google PageSpeed flags Google Analytics and AdSense for poor page speed practices like tab target size and browser caching. Does this penalize my site? No. I don't know why. I'm not sure that Analytics and AdSense would actually look for the tab target size. So the important thing about this is that the tab target size is that mobile user interfaces are accessed by tapping with your fingers. And so if the target is very small on the screen, people get annoyed because you don't know if you're touching the link that you wanted or something above it or next to it. So you see this a lot sometimes in menus where you get a bulleted list and then you have to try to tap very accurately. And so we have in PageSpeed Insights we can flag these and say, listen, it might be nice to make this a bit bigger or give it a little bit more breathing space around it. So that's what's going on here. So that's the target size. And browser caching, it's the best practice to cache as far into the future as possible for JavaScript or images, sometimes even your pages, where it makes sense. And Googlebot does honor caching headers, the standard HTTP headers for caching, and you will see us, cache it and crawl it at a lower rate, in that time frame. And browsers will also try to honor that. The browsers have different constraints, like is there a space on the device for the website to cache things. Now, I don't know exactly what the JavaScript and how analytics and AdSense JavaScript actually work, and what kind of trade-offs they've made in terms of setting the caching headers. That's something every webmaster would have to go through. The core of the recommendation is to set it as far into the future as you think is reasonable for that resource. And we might flag it and say, this looks a bit too short. Are you sure? And if you're sure and that's the right thing, then don't worry about it. Yeah, that's not an issue. But if you say that this JavaScript file is like, oh, why is it like set to cache for only 5 minutes, but it doesn't change and it hasn't changed in months and it won't change for another few months, then it might make sense to actually set the caching headers there. So it's something that PageSpeed Insights will flag for you to take a look at, but I wouldn't worry about it if you're making the right thing for your users. Okay.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Yes, go for it.
Yeah, you mentioned obviously tap size and different kind of mobile factors that come back. Obviously, you've released information that on the 21st of April, you're going to upgrade the algorithm to obviously focus on mobile-specific sites. Obviously, that's not a massive amount of time for people to totally overhaul their site. Just, is there any kind of specific elements that you should focus on over others? I know that on the information that comes back from the PageSpeed API for a mobile check, it does give you kind of some weighting against some of the issues that may have been spotted. Mm-hmm. Is there anything that obviously you've mentioned tap size and viewports and all the rest of it before.
Yes.
Is there anything in particular you'd focus on?
So two things about this is that the first question you said, the first part of the question you said is there's not a lot of time to do this. Personally, I think that's not right. I think people have been noticing more and more that a substantial part of their traffic is coming from mobile devices. There are websites that get well over 70% of their traffic from mobile. It's not unusual right now to find like 10, 20, 30% of a website's traffic to be coming from mobile. So it would have made a lot of sense to start thinking about this a year ago. Now, as for what you can do now, the key point for the 21st is to start thinking about the mobile UX stuff and the speed. So try to prioritize what you can fix and fix it ASAP. What you'll find is that if you're using a CMS, it's actually quite easy, like a standard CMS like WordPress or Drupal or Joomla. It's quite easy to install a theme and tweak that and to make it to follow your brand. It's quite easy to install that and use that as your mobile-friendly design, and that is fairly quick actually. If you're using custom CMS, it might take a little bit more time, but again, if you have good developers, then it should be fairly quick. That if you have in-house developers that develop the CMS, it should be just a little bit of a priority for them, regardless whether there's an algo change or not coming. Now, as for what you need to focus on, I would start with PageSpeed Insights, the UX rules, and make sure that you get as high a score on there as you can. I know some people who are very, very pedantic and will not be happy unless it's 100%. I wouldn't go that far. I would focus on getting it as much as you can, in the 80, 90 range, and if you have a few other things that are a bit harder to fix, but you're in the 90s already, I wouldn't worry about them for now. Prioritize other things. The other thing about PageSpeed Insights is that it tries to tell you what are the things that your page is doing that might be a bit slow when accessed on devices. Now, here in the UK, we already have 4G services, but not everywhere, and other countries don't have 4G, and 3G penetration is just not that, it's not that great yet. So think about also the slower networks and see what you can do to help users who are on the go accessing your website on a slower network, like a 2G or 3G network, and see what you can be doing to make the page render faster there. And lots of people, and there are lots of research. If you look at this, like case studies about how, people have taken pages that were quite heavy. I've seen one report of like 10 megabytes downloading stuff on mobile devices, which is not necessary. And then they figured out that actually a lot of the work that they were doing was not needed, and they figured out how to structure the page a little bit better, slightly tweaking the resources, the CSS and JavaScript, and they brought it down to much more manageable numbers, like 1 or 2 megabytes. And then you start prioritizing how to get that render as fast as possible. So I'd start with the UX stuff, because that's the most important thing. Like the tab targets, but also like don't ignore the page speed. So make sure that you have a plan to go forward about prioritize. Starting with the tab targets, the UX stuff, and then like going through the list as and when you can see them. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's perfect. I mean, the main reason, obviously, with regards to timescales, I actually work for an agency, and we work with small businesses. So we look after around kind of 1,400 small businesses. So obviously, rolling that out across all of them and trying to get them to buy into the fact that they need a mobile site going forward. That's why we kind of want to look at what we can focus on to try and improve that. But we have seen a massive gain in terms of mobile traffic over the last kind of couple of years, and it's something that we have been monitoring, and the percentage of mobile traffic that they get in comparison to desktop traffic. And like I say, yeah, we have seen that, and we were expecting something to kind of roll out, and it's nice to have a date going forward as well.
Yeah. So I assume that when you're measuring, 1,000 and bit, you said 1,400 clients, you're probably using, some kind of standard installation across all of them. So that, in a way, actually makes it a bit easier for you because, you're probably using some kind of CMS, and that means, you can start thinking about how can I tweak that CMS, whether, it's just a custom theme or, tweak that, and it will suddenly serve, 1,400 websites in one go. So it is a bit of work, but the impact for it is like in a one-off, and then you'll have, quite a bit of work, quite a bit of impact throughout your client base. So it cuts both ways when you start talking about these numbers.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, good luck. Thanks.
I would also add just one thing to what Pierre said. Ranking is very good because that's how you get most of your traffic, but also try to focus on conversions and try to tell your users, your clients, to increase conversions. So, very simple example: try to avoid interstitials, for instance, on your mobile sites. If you have to promote the app of your client, just use a banner instead of an interstitial. Another thing, if your client is an e-commerce website, try to use the autocomplete attribute in your forms to make completion of the forms easier and then conversion easier. So these are very tiny things that will not influence directly the ranking for now, but still they're very, very important for conversion.
That's perfect. Thanks.
By the way, quick poll of the 4 people we have on live. Do you know what the autocomplete attribute that Zineb mentioned? No? We have 1 no. What about the others? No plus. So we have another one from the chat. No. Okay. We'll see what we can do about that. But look into it. It's part of the HTML spec. It's important, and even Zineb mentioned retailers. That's also very important. But any form really should be can benefit from the use of the autocomplete attribute, and it will help people fill out the forms faster. By the way, when you think about the micro conversions I mentioned, filling out the form is a conversion. Yeah, it could be a form asking for a test drive for a car, or it could be something simple as hey, can you ship quickly this, or how long is your shipping time frame? Any more live questions?
Yeah. Hi, Pierre.
Hi.
So will the mobile index run separately from, or does it run separately from the Google index, or will it just be reflected separately in the results?
So the search results, we try to tailor the search result as best as we can for the device. So the mobile, we have quite a few mobile-specific ranking changes that we've announced over the past couple of years. So for example, we've seen some websites that like do 404s only on mobile pages, only for mobile devices. So these may not rank as highly as That's been out for a year and a half now, if not more. So for the 21st, it's on a per-page basis, and as we crawl it and process it, we will figure out if it's mobile-friendly or not. And if it is mobile-friendly or if it's not, then the algorithm will know about it and rank it accordingly. The one question, the one thing we haven't mentioned so far, specifically about mobile, and we see this quite a bit, is that lots of people will have a mobile-friendly page when you look at it on your phone. But Googlebot can't tell it's mobile friendly because Googlebot is blocked from crawling the CSS and the JavaScript. And so then that doesn't work. And so this is actually the cheapest SEO you can do, which is check that your CSS and JavaScript, that we can crawl them. And if we can't, make sure that we can, and you're done. You'll probably be able to say, you know what, this mobile page, suddenly Google knows about that it is mobile friendly. And you can use the fetch and render feature in Webmaster Tools. There's you can choose the mobile crawler, smartphone crawler in fetch and render, and it will tell you, give you a screenshot and tell you what's going on and what we see and what you can fix. Okay?
Yeah, there was an article today where someone was saying that, or the other day, someone was saying the search impact. No, not the search impact. The page speed insights was giving them all green on the site, but the Webmaster Tools wasn't. So apparently there's a difference there.
Yes. So yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, and you know what the difference is.
Yeah. So the page speed insights actually functions like a normal browser would do, like a normal user's browser, and it doesn't obey the rules of TXT. It helps you during development. And so it will say, this is what a user would see, but we need to see it. Crawlers have other considerations to take into account, which is the rules of TXT directives, and so Googlebot needs to be able to see the same thing. So allow us to crawl, and you'll see that page speed insights and fetch and render will actually be the same, and will give you the final same result. And then that's what you need to worry about for our indexing and ranking for the 21st.
Okay. And will we see more of these changes in the news results as well? Because sometimes there's some sites that are not mobile friendly at all that show up.
I don't know specifically about news, but I do know we are always testing and launching things. So, even if I say no now, it might be different in a month's time, or if I say yes, it might be that's the last test for 2015. So, don't focus too much about what our algorithm is doing. Focus on what's best for your users. And if you start thinking about it that way, you'll start seeing that you'll have lots of mobile traffic, and you can make their life a bit easier. Okay?
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions live?
Hey Pierre, I'm gonna jump in with the question.
Hi, sir. Can you speak up a bit? It's a bit.
Yeah, sorry. My internet connection. So that might be. My question is regarding e-commerce websites specifically, because we also work as an agency with a lot of small businesses, and a lot of issues we encounter are regarding recommendations about website structures, because we usually use the Google recommendations regarding not having too many links on your page and things like that. But sometimes businesses that barely start their own website think that's best for their users to, I don't know, show up 500 links in their menu for every single subcategory they have and everything else. So do you have any specific recommendations when it comes to specifically websites that have a lot of products, a lot of categories, and how they should structure those best?
So there are two answers to this. The better answer actually is to actually do usability tests, and there are lots of. That's a big topic that getting into it now, I'm not going to do it any justice. But if you get like 5 or 10, not even that number, people to use your website on the device, that you care about, like mobile phones or desktops or tablets. If you get 5 mobile phone users and say, listen, you come to our website because you want to do X, try to go do it. And you'll get lots of feedback from that. And that will help you prioritize. And the other answer to this is that as you're thinking about your personas, you start thinking about, okay, what are the most common tasks that I care about? And it's these tasks, 1, 2, 3, 4. These need to be very front and center in the menu. But what you're talking about, 500 categories, that's a big website. Okay, so this is where search really comes in. So you'll need to have a site-specific search and make it really, really easy to find on mobile devices or on all devices. There's quite a bit of research about how site search can really improve the user experience and help drive conversions, drive whatever metric you care about. So make sure you have that working really well, and keep track of what are the common searches you have on your on your website, and look at the search results that you're getting and see why is that not, is it working well or is it not, and you can improve it. When you're talking about a fairly big website, this becomes into figure out what are the most important things that need to be in the menu, categories, and then talk to your users about what's important and is this design working for them, and talk about and figure out what you need to do about search on your site search. Yeah.
Right, but from just Google's point of view, would there be any issues with such a big website or with such high amount of links per page? Would there be an issue that Google doesn't get to index certain pages or?
I worry about this. I don't worry about that. I mean, unless you're talking about 10 million links on a page, then it's how big is this page and how useful for users? Is it going to time out how people download? That's a different question. Okay, so I wouldn't worry about that. I would really start talking to your users and understand what they want and you're serving them. Forget a little bit about the technical problem that any perceived problem that we might have with the page. Forget about that. What you're talking about is something a lot more interesting in terms of users and usability and the user journey. So
okay.
Yeah, and just to add another resource, I just posted on the chat a link to one of the blog posts we had last year about faceted navigation and the 5 best advice and 5 worst thing to do. So this could help you actually, and it also faceted navigation when it's done correctly. It helps Google understand the structure of your website and crawl your website more efficiently. So you can have a look at that.
Yeah. Thanks.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi there. Right, I've got a question. I left it on the Q&A, but here we go. We did a change of images. From serving from images from our own domain to CDN, CloudFront.
Mm-hmm.
We did change the domain. We did 301s from the old URL to the new URLs.
The image URLs, yeah?
Sorry?
The image URLs.
Image URLs, that's right. Did 301s for all of them, but we lost basically 50% of that traffic. So what we then did is actually in the sitemaps that we're dynamically creating, we used your extensions, and for each page, we're talking about an e-commerce website. For each page with a photo, we actually listed the image within the sitemaps.
Yep.
And that's pointing to the new URLs as well. We've submitted that about a couple of weeks ago, and I still don't see any change in the webmaster. Well, in the webmaster tools, it's now showing the images sections, but actually only 16% of the content is being indexed, and we're not recuperating this traffic.
Yeah. So there are 2 things about this. One is that I'd like to see the site just to make sure nothing is, there's something we could be handling a little bit better on our end. So if you can send that site.
Do that in the chat, yeah.
Yeah, the chat, that'd be great. Now the second thing is that images are a little bit different indexing than how normal web pages get indexed. So if you change the URLs, in large scale like this,
yes.
You probably will see a little bit of a dip, but it will come back and recover in time. How long does it take? It depends. You said it's an e-commerce website. If it's a small e-commerce website like 10 pages, it shouldn't be that long. But if you're talking about tens of thousands of SKUs, then it will take some time to update the index. I mean, think about it. It's not instantaneous updating of the index, no matter how much I'd love it to be.
I understand. But what could it be? What could be the time frame? Or because we've got more websites to do.
As we recrawl the pages individually, so it's if you think about it, an image, we need a page that is referencing this image. So as we recrawl these pages, and as we recrawl these pages, find out that the image has changed, and we need to go and fetch that image and try to index it. Sounds like you're doing all the right things in terms of redirecting users, which is important, and the other thing is the sitemaps. But so you're doing the right things. It's just going to take some time to get there.
To come back because we've started with the small one. Actually, we've got 10 more sites to do, and we started with the small one.
Yeah.
And I'm a bit afraid now to move the bigger ones. I don't know if we could move the content by ID, sort of do slots of. A tenth of the images, move them, and then do another slot of tenths or something like that.
Well, that's one way to do it. You stagger it, but at the end of the day, you are moving these pages, and you're just you're not taking. What would happen there is that you might have a loss of traffic a little bit less than but you're spreading it out over a longer time period. So it depends how what's important for your business. But I see you've pasted that in the chat, your website. So I'll take a look and just make sure that there's something simple going on, like can we crawl the CDN, for example? That's one question that.
Hopefully so. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. Check the robot.txt file of the CDN. Make sure that we can crawl it. That's one thing.
Yeah. On the CDN side, we shouldn't do a robot.txt or anything like that.
Let us crawl them, and let us crawl everything as much as you can. I've seen some people move to CDNs and then they forget that, to update their robot.txt file, and then they lose traffic, and then they come back a few months later and they found that there's no chance for them to recover because they've told us not to crawl these pages, these images. So just make sure these are like the simple things that that you're talking about, are not the obvious things, are not broken. And
okay.
And the other thing I'd like to ask you, please, is that if you can post this in the forums, this question, if you can post that in the forums, please, because I'll take a look, and if I find anything interesting, I might want to post it publicly so that others can benefit. Yeah.
Okay.
No promises on that, but if you can, feel free to share the thread with me when you post it in our forums, and then.
Where should I put that? Sorry, in the chat or in the?
Well, I mean, you can do a private share on Google+, or you can put it in the events page, the events Hangouts page on Google+. When you post the forum thread.
In the Q&A.
In the Q&A, yeah, that will work. Yeah.
Okay, I'll put the question is already in the Q&A, but I'll put the domain in the Q&A as well.
Yeah, okay. Please do. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Cheers.
Any more questions, or should we wrap up? Okay. Zinab, did you see any other questions come in? I haven't been checking.
No, I'm just looking at the Q&A questions, the first ones, and so one was very interesting. It was about the effect of responsive web design, and basically whether a responsive web design website will rank better than another mobile website. So we've seen this question a lot of time, and it's a myth because people tend to think that responsive web design will rank better, but no. Actually, if you use another configuration, and if you build your website on a separate URL or using dynamic serving, and everything is set up correctly, there is no reason why that other website would not rank correctly. So we have always recommended to use whatever configuration is best for you: responsive web design, dynamic serving, or separate website. We support all three of them. Just make sure that the configuration is set up correctly and that you have no errors. For instance, if you choose a separate URL solution, which is completely supported, just make sure that the redirects are fine. If you choose dynamic serving, make sure that your user agent string is up to date. That's it. So we tend to recommend responsive web design, not because it will rank better, but because we see less errors on responsive web design websites. And they also require less maintenance.
There are lots of benefits for responsive web design. Yeah. We have a question come in, and I'm trying to understand it. I want to ask one thing. This is in the chat, in the group chat. That's my content length throughout and no stops, which is interpreted as extending forever, have effect. I don't understand the question. Can you please type it again or explain a little bit more what's your question, or maybe post it in the forums if it needs a bit more explanation?
Is it about infinite scrolling by any chance?
That's a good possibility. Yeah. Let me check. Setting, if you can explain it again.
Okay, well, let me take the last question of the Q&A. In the meantime, it's a question about our latest announcement about the ranking change. So it's going to take effect on April the 21st. And the question is this going to affect desktop results as well, or only mobile results? Well, as we announced, this is only for mobile results. The ranking change is going to impact mobile results, and mobile-friendly websites are going to benefit from a slight ranking boost.
Kian, I'd like to wrap up now, please. So if possible, please ask your question in the forums, and I'll see what I can do. If you post a thread, the forum thread in the in the Hangout page, the events page, in the Q&A, I'll take a look and see what we can do to help you. Is that okay? Okay. Any other questions? Yes. Thank you. Excellent. And please post it in the forums. I'll put a link to the forums when I follow up now, okay? Cool. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.